What is up with Cadd2, Csus2, Cadd9, C9, C2, Csus9? What's up with those? Let's talk about it. The quick answer and the simplest answer for most musicians is that they all really mean the same thing. If you see a 2 after your chord or a 9, most people in common language are referring to basically the same chord. I think this chord is probably the most common what I call type 2 chord. A type 2 chord is common chords that are fancy, but they're easy enough to make and they sound good, and they're common in our current culture that everyone uses them, even if they don't really even understand necessarily the full music theory thing. So the short answer is, when you see a C with something 2 or a C with something 9, most of the time those people are trying to refer to the same chord. And that is that common one that you see. So whether you see it as a 2 or a 9, again, they're probably referring to that same chord. Some kind of simple version of this chord. So if that answer is good enough for you, you can just hop off this video. But if you want to get into the theory a little bit, let's do it. What I'll say is, this chord that is most commonly called C2, Csus2, Cadd9, C9, Csus9, right? Should probably be called a Cadd9. The notes in a Cadd9 are C, E, G, and then D. So what's up with the 2 and the 9? Let's talk about it. The 2 and the 9 are the same note, except technically should be an octave higher. If you look at the C, and we'll just use C as the example here because it's the most common one. If you called C1, what would be C's 2 note? It would be D. And if you continued around the octave, or the notes in the scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, that higher D and that lower D could be called a 9 or back to 2. So 2s and 9s, that's the first thing to take away from this. Technically, 2s and 9s are the same note, but should technically be an octave apart. So C's 2 note should be, you could say, this open D. So if you see a 2 and you want to be very technical, and you're sure that whoever made the chord chart was confident that it should be, in this case, a 2 and not a 9, you could play a C with an open, no middle finger note. That might be incorrectly called a C2, but probably should be called like a Csus2. So the sus means kind of like, you could say, instead of the 3 note, 1, 2, 3, E, is C's 3 note, C, D, E. Instead of 3, use a 2. That's why sometimes you'll see Sus4, because they're saying, instead of including C's natural third, which is E, make it a 4 instead. So sus, instead of 3, make it a 4, Sus4. But going back to 2. 2s and 9s. So C's 2 is technically a D. C, D, or 1, 2, right? So this would be a C Sus2, or maybe incorrectly called a C2. Oh, it's got that low D in it. It's a little muddy. But so then where's C's 9, or where's an octave of that D? Well, we find it up here, and that's why we play this shape so commonly, because this is a high D note. This is technically just a C major chord with a bright D note in it. So that's why it's called C add 9. Make it a C, but add 9. Add a D to it. G, which is where my pinky is already naturally in a C chord. We have an open G. When we play a plain C major, we have an open G here. So by adding that pinky, C naturally already has a G in it as C's 5th. So by adding this high G note, we didn't change the nature of the chord. So technically we should call this a Cadd9 because everything about it is a natural C chord. We've got C's, we've got E's, we've got G's. There's a G open and a G on the pinky. But we've added a 9 note. Instead of that pointy note back here in a traditional C, we've lifted it to here, from C to D. So it can be really confusing, and quite honestly, information is a little bit confusing for me too. But the takeaway is, when you see something with a 2 or a 9, just assume they probably meant, if you're not looking at a jazz book or something, if you're just looking at a chord chart that some 12-year-old made on a song and they put a Csus2 or Cadd2 or C9, Cadd9, they probably mean the same chord, which is a version of this. Fun fact, a C9 is not this chord at all. A C9 technically is like a C7 chord with also a 9 in it, so it could look something like this. It's definitely a jazzy chord. Your common country or worship song or pop song, Taylor Swift song, it's probably not using that C9 chord. So a C9 also includes a 7. I've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's a colorful chord. C9 was such a simple name, has a lot of flavor to it. So hopefully that clears it up a little bit. The big takeaway is, again, if you see any version of those C something, they probably mean the same chord. And maybe we had a little fun with understanding the sus part and the add part. Add just means it's got all its naturalness in it already, but also we want to add one more thing to it. Sus means replace. Sus means replace, say, the third note, which is naturally in the chord, with the 2. Csus2 means leave the 3 out. No 3. Sometimes you'll see a chord that says like C2, no 3. And anyway, just use this chord. My name's Jacob Paul. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.